The evening sun painted the sky orange and purple over Terra 3, as Kate Morrison checked her hydroponic tomatoes. Her hands moved with practiced ease through the green leaves, testing the moisture levels and checking for any signs of disease. 20 years of farming had taught her to read plants like most people read books. Terra 3 was not the most exciting place in the galaxy. The agricultural moon orbited a gas giant in a quiet corner of human space. Most young people left for the core worlds as soon as they could afford passage. Kate had stayed. She liked the silence, the predictable rhythm of planting and harvesting, the way each season brought its own challenges and rewards. Her farm sat in a valley between two mountain ranges. The automated systems she had installed over the years meant she could manage 200 acres mostly by herself. The nearest neighbor lived 50 miles away. The closest town was a 3-hour drive on the dusty road that wound through the canyon. Kate preferred it that way. She was adjusting the nutrient flow to Section C when the first sign of trouble appeared. A bright line of fire streaked across the darkening sky. Kate paused, shading her eyes with one hand. Meteor showers were common on Terra 3, but this looked different. The object was moving too slowly, changing direction in ways that natural space rocks never did. The fireball grew larger, closer. Kate realized with growing alarm that it was heading straight for her property. She dropped her tools and ran for cover behind the reinforced walls of the greenhouse. The roar of superheated air grew deafening. Through the transparent aluminum panels, she watched the object slam into her northern field with tremendous force. The impact shook the ground like an earthquake.
Kate grabbed a support beam to keep from falling.
Her carefully calibrated irrigation systems went haywire, spraying water in all directions. Alert messages flooded her wrist display as various farm systems reported damage or disconnection. When the shaking stopped, Kate cautiously emerged from the greenhouse. Where her best wheat field had been, a deep furrow now carved through the earth. At the end of the gouge, something smoked and sparked. Even from 100 yards away, she could see it was not a meteorite. Kate approached slowly, her work boots crunching on the scattered debris. The object resolved into a vehicle of some kind, though unlike any she had seen. It resembled a motorcycle but with no wheels, just sleek gravitational repulsors that still glowed faintly blue despite the obvious damage. The hull was made of something that seemed to shift between silver and deep space black, depending on the angle of view. Movement near the vehicle caught her attention. A figure lay crumpled in the dirt, thrown clear during the crash. Kate quickened her pace, her first aid training kicking in. As she drew closer, she stopped short in surprise. The figure was a woman, but not like any human Kate had ever seen. Her hair was the color of starlight, seeming to glow with its own inner radiance. Her skin had an otherworldly shimmer, as if tiny diamonds were embedded just beneath the surface. Most striking were her ears, which came to delicate points that peeked through her disheveled hair. Kate knelt beside the unconscious woman, checking for a pulse. The heartbeat was there but strange, a double rhythm unlike human normal. Blood seeped from a gash on the woman's forehead, but the blood itself seemed wrong. It was too bright, almost luminescent, and it seemed to evaporate quickly when exposed to air. A soft hiss made Kate freeze. Coiled around the woman's neck was what Kate first took for an exotic scarf or piece of armor. Then it moved, raising a triangular head to regard her with eyes like molten gold. It was a dragon, though barely larger than a house cat. Its scales shifted color from deep purple to midnight black as it watched her, tiny wisps of smoke curling from its nostrils. Kate held very still. She had read about dragons in school, of course. Everyone knew the stories of the great dragon wars centuries ago, before humanity had reached the stars. But those had been creatures the size of shuttles, not this delicate thing that could probably fit in a shopping bag. The dragon studied her for a long moment, then seemed to make a decision. It lowered its head and made a sound somewhere between a purr and a whimper, clearly concerned for its companion. Kate slowly reached out, letting the creature smell her hand. Its scales were warm to the touch, not cold like a reptile should be. Kate faced a decision. Protocol was clear. Any crash landings should be reported to the authorities immediately. The Colonial Defense Force would want to know about this. They would come with their scanners and soldiers, take the woman and her strange vehicle away for study. The dragon too would end up in some laboratory, dissected to understand how it could exist when physics said it should not. But something held Kate back. Maybe it was the protective way the dragon curled around the woman's shoulders. Maybe it was the delicate beauty of the stranger's face, which even unconscious held an expression of fierce determination. Or maybe it was just that Kate had been alone too long and could not bear to hand over someone who clearly needed help to the cold machinery of government. She made her choice. Carefully sliding her arms under the woman, Kate lifted her from the ground. The stranger weighed less than she should have, as if her bones were hollow like a bird's. The dragon adjusted its position, draping across both their shoulders, its warm weight oddly comforting. Kate carried her unusual burden back to the farmhouse. The woman did not stir, though Kate could feel her breathing against her chest. The dragon kept watch, occasionally making soft chirping sounds that seemed directed at its companion. The farmhouse was old but well maintained. Kate had modernized most of it over the years, installing medical scanners and emergency equipment that were standard for isolated homesteads. She laid the woman on the guest bed and activated the diagnostic systems. The readouts made no sense. The scanner identified the patient as humanoid, but kept throwing error messages about unknown biological markers. Core temperature was 3 degrees higher than human normal. Brain activity showed patterns the medical AI could not interpret. Even basic blood chemistry came back as outside known parameters. Kate did what she could with traditional methods. She cleaned the head wound, applying synthetic skin patches that would promote healing. She checked for broken bones, finding none despite the violence of the crash. The woman's clothing was strange too. A single-piece garment that felt like silk but resisted her attempts to cut it for better access to injuries. The dragon watched everything Kate did with those unsettling golden eyes. When she finished her ministrations, it settled beside its companion's head, tail curled around itself, clearly prepared to stand vigil. Kate stood back and really looked at what she had brought into her home. An alien woman of impossible beauty, a creature from legend, a vehicle that defied known engineering. Whatever story lay behind this crash, it was far beyond the simple life of a Terra 3 farmer. She thought about calling someone again. Her friend Amy in town would know what to do. Or she could reach out to the emergency services, claim she had just found the crash. It was not too late to step back from whatever this was becoming. Instead, Kate pulled up a chair and sat down to wait. The dragon regarded her with something that might have been approval. Outside, night had fully fallen. The stars shone through her window, and Kate wondered which of them this strange woman called home. The quiet of her farm settled around them, broken only by the soft breathing of the unconscious visitor and the occasional chirp from her guardian. Kate had wanted a simple life, predictable and safe. Looking at the pointed ears and shimmering skin of her unexpected guest, she suspected those days were over. Still, as she kept watch through the night, she felt no regret. Some moments chose you, her grandmother used to say. When they came, you could either step forward or step back. Kate had stepped forward. Now she would see where that choice led. 3 days passed before the stranger opened her eyes. Kate was changing the water in the guest room when she heard a soft gasp. She turned to find those unusual violet eyes staring at her with a mixture of confusion and alarm. The woman tried to sit up too quickly and groaned, pressing a hand to her head. The little dragon, who had barely moved from her side, chirped excitedly and nuzzled against her cheek. She spoke to it in a language Kate had never heard, all flowing sounds and musical tones. Kate held up her hands in what she hoped was a universal gesture of peace. The woman watched her warily, then seemed to notice the bandages on her own head and the clean sheets beneath her. Some of the tension left her shoulders. The stranger spoke, and Kate was surprised to hear accented but clear standard. Most species took years to master human language, but this woman spoke it like she had been practicing for decades. Her voice was like silver bells, clear and somehow otherworldly. She said her name was Luna. Just Luna, no family name or planet of origin. The dragon, she explained, was called Shadowmere. They were traders, she claimed, caught in an unexpected meteor storm that damaged their navigation systems. The crash was an accident, nothing more. Kate nodded along, not believing a word. Traders did not fly military-grade hoverbikes. Traders did not have muscles that moved like trained fighters even when injured. Traders certainly did not have dragons that could apparently survive in the vacuum of space. But Kate had not survived 20 years alone by being confrontational. She introduced herself and explained how she had found them. Luna listened intently, those violet eyes never leaving Kate's face. When Kate finished, Luna simply said, "Thank you," though the words seemed to cost her something. Over the next days, an odd routine developed. Luna was healing with remarkable speed. Whatever her species, They recovered from injury faster than humans. She began moving around the farmhouse, always with Shadowmere draped across her shoulders or floating alongside her on wings that seemed too small to support even his minimal weight. Kate showed her the damaged hoverbike, which she had hauled into her workshop using the farm's heavy equipment. Luna's expression tightened when she saw it, but she maintained her story about being a trader. She asked if Kate could help repair it, offering payment in precious metals or technology. Kate had always been good with machines. Growing up on Terra 3 meant learning to fix things yourself or doing without. She had rebuilt harvesters, rewired entire greenhouses, even constructed her own water purification system from salvaged parts. But Luna's bike was beyond anything in her experience. The bike used principles Kate barely understood: gravity manipulation, dimensional folding, energy systems that seemed to pull power from space itself. Luna tried to explain some of it, but her explanations raised more questions than answers. Still, Kate was determined to try. It gave her something to focus on besides the growing mystery of her guests. As they worked together in the workshop, Kate noticed things. The way Luna's hands moved with absolute precision, never wasting emotion, how she could calculate complex equations in her head faster than Kate's computer. The scars on her arms that looked suspiciously like plasma burns from military weapons. Shadowmere often helped, his tiny claws surprisingly dexterous with delicate components. More than once, Kate saw him breathe on damaged circuits, the parts mending themselves in ways that made no scientific sense. When she cut herself on sharp metal, the dragon immediately flew over and breathed on the wound. The pain vanished instantly, the cut sealing without even a scar. Kate stared at her healed hand, then at the dragon, who preened as if he had done nothing unusual. Luna watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. Neither of them commented on what had just happened. Days turned into a week, then two. The bike slowly came together under their combined efforts. Kate found herself enjoying the company more than she wanted to admit. Luna was intelligent and surprisingly funny once she relaxed a little. She told stories of other worlds that might have been truth or complete fiction. She helped with farm chores without being asked, learning the hydroponic systems with the same intensity she brought to everything. Shadowmere had taken to following Kate around when Luna was resting. He would perch on her shoulder while she worked, occasionally offering commentary in the form of chirps and whistles. Kate found herself talking to him like she used to talk to the farm cats before the last one died of old age. He seemed to understand, tilting his head and responding with sounds that almost felt like conversation. It was Shadowmere who gave away the first real clue about their true nature. Kate was organizing parts in the workshop when she noticed him freeze, his golden eyes fixed on the eastern sky. A moment later, Luna appeared in the doorway, moving with that dangerous grace Kate had noticed before. Luna spoke quickly to the dragon in her musical language. Shadowmere responded with agitation, his scales shifting to deeper purples and blacks. Without a word to Kate, Luna moved to the bike and began pulling open panels Kate had never seen before. Inside were things that definitely did not belong on a trader's vehicle. Data cores with military encryption, what looked like stolen intelligence files bearing coalition markings, weapon systems disguised as standard components. Luna's hands flew over them, checking each one with the efficiency of long practice. She must have sensed Kate watching because she turned, her violet eyes now hard as gemstones. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The air between them crackled with tension. Shadowmere looked between them, making soft, distressed sounds. Then Luna's shoulders sagged slightly. She closed the panels and turned to face Kate fully. Her voice was steady but tired as she began to speak. She was running from something. Someone. Forces that would burn entire worlds to capture what she carried. The data cores contained information that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. She had not meant to involve Kate, had planned to repair her bike and leave before anyone could track her here. Kate listened without interrupting. Part of her was angry at being lied to, but a larger part understood. Trust was dangerous when you were being hunted. She had given Luna shelter without questions, and Luna had protected her by saying nothing. When Luna finished, Kate asked only one thing. Would staying here bring danger to Terra 3 and its people? Luna hesitated, then nodded. They were already looking for her. It was only a matter of time before they tracked the crash signature to this quiet moon. Kate walked to her tool bench and began pulling out her best equipment. Luna watched in confusion as Kate started laying out parts and supplies with determined efficiency. When Kate began disconnecting the safety limiters on the bike's weapon systems, Luna finally spoke. Kate's answer was simple. The bike needed to be ready for more than just running. If trouble was coming to her moon, she wanted Luna to have every advantage. Besides, Kate had never much liked the coalition anyway. Too many rules, too much control, too many people who thought they knew better than farmers how to live. Luna stared at her for a long moment, then smiled. It was the first genuine smile Kate had seen from her, transforming her ethereal beauty into something warmer and more real. Shadowmere chirped happily and flew figure eights around both their heads. They worked through the night with new urgency. Luna finally began explaining the bike's true capabilities, while Kate modified systems to exceed their design limits. As dawn broke over Terra 3, the hoverbike was no longer just repaired but upgraded into something truly formidable. Kate stood back, wiping grease from her hands, and admired their work. Luna moved beside her close enough that Kate could smell the strange floral scent of her hair. Shadowmere perched between them, his scales now a contented blue-green. Whatever came next, they would be ready for it. Kate had wanted a simple life, but she was discovering that some complications were worth embracing. She glanced at Luna, who was checking the bike's weapons with professional skill, and allowed herself a small smile. The quiet farmer and the mysterious warrior. It sounded like the beginning of a story her grandmother would have loved. The morning started like any other on Kate's farm. She was feeding the chickens while Luna ran diagnostics on the newly upgraded hoverbike. Shadowmere hunted mice in the barn, his hunting style more cat than mythical dragon. For 2 weeks they had existed in this peaceful bubble, preparing for a storm that seemed increasingly distant. The illusion shattered when Kate's proximity alarms screamed to life. She looked up to see dark shapes descending through the morning clouds. Coalition enforcement vessels, their hulls bristling with weapons, surrounded the farm in a perfect tactical formation. Luna emerged from the workshop at a run, her entire demeanor transformed. Gone was the injured trader or even the careful fugitive. In her place stood someone who radiated command authority. She barked orders in that musical language, and Shadowmere responded instantly, growing from cat size to something closer to a large dog. Kate stood frozen as soldiers in powered armor dropped from the vessels. Their weapons were already charged and aimed. A voice boomed from the lead ship's speakers, demanding the immediate surrender of the fugitive designated Luna and all stolen coalition property. Luna turned to Kate, her violet eyes filled with regret. She started to speak, probably to apologize or tell Kate to stand aside. Kate cut her off by grabbing the plasma rifle she kept for predators and taking cover behind the workshop wall. The lead coalition officer removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and cold gray eyes. He identified himself as Colonel Marcus Webb of the Special Enforcement Division. He spoke directly to Kate, offering her immunity if she surrendered the fugitive immediately. Her farm would be compensated for damages and she could continue her life without interference. Luna stepped forward before Kate could respond. Her voice carried across the farmyard with surprising power. She was not just Luna, she declared. She was Commander Luna Starweaver, last ranking officer of the Andromedan Elf Armada and keeper of the Great Secret. The colonel's expression tightened. He knew that name. Everyone in the coalition military knew that name. Luna Starweaver, the ghost of Andromeda, who had led the final desperate defense of the elf worlds, who had escaped with something the coalition desperately wanted back. Kate listened in growing amazement as Luna spoke of her people's destruction. The coalition had come to the Andromedan system speaking of unity and peace. The elves had welcomed them, sharing their knowledge of cosmic energies and dimensional science. But the coalition saw only threats in their abilities, power that could challenge human dominance. The war had been swift and brutal. Entire worlds burned. Ancient forests that had grown for millennia turned to ash. The void dragons, beings of pure energy given form, were hunted to near extinction. Their crime was existing outside the coalition's understanding of what life should be. But the elves had preserved something precious before their fall. The Seed Vault, a repository containing genetic templates of thousands of species the coalition had eliminated in their expansion. Not just military targets, but peaceful civilizations whose only crime was being different. With that knowledge, those species could live again. Colonel Webb had heard enough. He gave Kate one last chance to step aside. When she responded by raising her plasma rifle, he shook his head almost sadly and gave the order to attack. The first wave of soldiers advanced with military precision. Kate's shots barely slowed them, their armor designed to withstand far more than a civilian weapon. But Luna moved like liquid mercury, her recovered strength and natural grace making her nearly impossible to target. She had acquired some of Kate's farming tools, and in her hands they became deadly weapons. Shadowmere revealed his true nature. The small dragon expanded again, reaching the size of a horse. His scales turned void black, seeming to drink in light. When he breathed, it was not fire that emerged, but something that made reality ripple. Powered armor simply ceased to exist where that breath touched, leaving confused soldiers standing in their undergarments. The coalition forces regrouped, bringing heavier weapons to bear. Plasma bolts turned Kate's workshop into molten slag. Her carefully maintained greenhouses exploded in showers of glass and twisted metal. 20 years of work destroyed in minutes. Kate felt rage build in her chest. This was her home, her life. These soldiers came here with their war and their politics, destroying everything she had built. She grabbed an explosive charge from her mining supplies and hurled it at a cluster of troops, diving clear as it detonated. Luna appeared at her side, pulling her to better cover. The elf woman was bleeding from several wounds, her strange luminescent blood leaving glowing trails. She pressed something into Kate's hand, a small device covered in alien script. If Luna fell, she explained quickly, Kate needed to activate this beacon. It would transmit the seed vault's location to every resistance cell in the galaxy. The knowledge could not die here. Too many extinct voices cried out for justice. Kate wanted to argue, but plasma fire forced them to move. They fell back through the farm, using every building and terrain feature. Kate's knowledge of her own land became their greatest advantage. She led them through irrigation tunnels and around blind corners, buying precious seconds. The coalition brought in aerial support. Fighters screamed overhead, turning the ground behind them into glass. Shadowmere took to the air to meet them, his form shifting and warping as he moved between dimensions. One fighter simply vanished, pulled into whatever space the Void Dragon accessed. Another crashed when its pilot found his cockpit suddenly full of very confused chickens. Despite their efforts, the circle tightened. Colonel Webb commanded his forces with ruthless efficiency. He knew Luna's reputation and took no chances. Overwhelming firepower and careful tactics slowly cornered the defenders. They made their final stand in Kate's farmhouse. Luna had found Kate's grandfather's old service rifle and wielded it with deadly accuracy. Shadowmere crouched on the roof, his breath creating a barrier that plasma could not penetrate. Kate herself worked frantically to boost the beacon's signal, using every bit of technical knowledge she possessed. Webb's voice echoed through loudspeakers again. He spoke of the greater good, of the peace the coalition had brought to countless worlds. The old ways led only to chaos and war. Species mixing their genetics, beings that defied natural law, civilizations that refused to accept human guidance. All these things threatened the stability of galactic society. Luna laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. She called out her response, her voice carrying despite the battle. The coalition's peace was the peace of graveyards. Their stability came from crushing anything that did not conform. They feared the void dragons because they could not control them. They destroyed the elves because their magic exposed human limitations. The seed vault represented hope for the galaxy's true diversity. Every template stored within was a voice the coalition had silenced, a future they had stolen. Luna would die before letting that hope be extinguished again. Kate finished her modifications and activated the beacon. A pulse of energy shot skyward, penetrating the coalition, jamming through sheer power. Across the galaxy, hidden receivers would pick up the signal. The location of the seed vault would spread like wildfire through underground networks. Colonel Webb realized what had happened. His controlled assault became a desperate rush. Soldiers poured into the farmhouse from every entrance. Luna fought like a being possessed, but there were simply too many. Shadowmere made a sound Kate had never heard before, a keening wail that made reality itself vibrate. The dragon pulled Luna and Kate close with his wings. Reality twisted around them, the farmhouse fading into dimensional static. Kate's last view of her home was Colonel Webb standing in her burning fields, speaking rapidly into his communicator. The chickens pecked around his feet, apparently unbothered by the destruction. Then everything went white. They rematerialized 100 miles away in the canyon Kate had explored as a child. Luna collapsed immediately. Her wounds finally overwhelming even her inhuman endurance, Shadowmere shrank back to his small size, clearly exhausted by the dimensional jump. Kate cradled Luna's head in her lap, pressing torn cloth against the worst of the bleeding. The elf woman smiled weakly, her violet eyes unfocused but satisfied. The beacon had worked. The secret was out. The coalition could not stop what came next. In the distance, smoke rose from what had been Kate's farm. Her entire life reduced to a war zone because she had chosen compassion over protocol. She should feel destroyed, but instead she felt strangely free. The farm had been her hiding place as much as her home. Now she had no choice but to move forward. Luna whispered something in her musical language. Shadowmere translated with soft chirps and images that appeared in Kate's mind. The resistance needed them. There were others fighting the coalition's tyranny, waiting for the hope the seed vault represented. Would Kate join them in that fight to restore the galaxy's stolen futures? Kate drove the stolen coalition transport through Terra 3's winding canyons with grim determination. In the back, Luna lay on improvised bedding, her wounds healing slowly despite Shadowmere's constant attention. The little dragon had exhausted himself with the dimensional jump and could manage only small bursts of healing breath. They had stolen the vehicle from a coalition patrol that made the mistake of searching the canyons alone. Kate's knowledge of the terrain had made the ambush simple. She felt no guilt about the unconscious soldiers they had left tied up in a cave. They had destroyed her home and tried to kill Luna. The old Kate who worried about following rules had burned up with her farmhouse. Luna drifted in and out of consciousness, speaking sometimes in her musical language and sometimes in standard. She told Kate fragments of her past. The crystal cities of Andromeda where music was architecture and buildings sang in the solar winds. The Void Dragon nurseries where beings of pure energy learned to take physical form. The day the coalition ships arrived with promises that turned to plasma fire. Kate listened while navigating paths she had not traveled since childhood. These canyons had been her playground when visiting her grandmother during school breaks. She knew every hidden cave and secret passage. More importantly, she remembered her grandmother's stories about the old resistance. Her grandmother Margaret had been more than just a colonist on Terra 3. Before the coalition consolidated power, she had fought with the Free Human Alliance, trying to prevent the corporate oligarchs from becoming the authoritarian government they were today. The resistance had failed, but her grandmother had never surrendered, just hidden. Kate guided the transport to a section of canyon that looked like natural rockfall. But she remembered the trick her grandmother had shown her. 3 rocks pushed, in sequence, caused a section of wall to swing inward, revealing a tunnel large enough for vehicles. The passage led to a natural cavern system expanded by human hands. Emergency lighting flickered to life, powered by geothermal taps that still functioned after 40 years. Kate parked the transport and helped Luna inside, Shadowmere hovering anxiously around them. The base was exactly as her grandmother had left it. Weapon racks lined the walls, communication equipment waited under dust covers. Most importantly, a medical bay with military-grade healing pods stood ready. Kate got Luna into one of the pods, watching the elf woman's wounds begin to close properly under the advanced treatment. While Luna healed, Kate explored her inheritance. She found her grandmother's personal logs, text files explaining the truth about the coalition's rise, how they had eliminated opposing voices not through war, but through economic pressure and political manipulation, how humanity had traded freedom for security and gained neither. The weapons were still functional, maintained by automated systems, plasma rifles that could punch through coalition armor, explosive charges designed to take down aircraft, even a few sets of powered armor modified with stealth systems the coalition had banned decades ago. But the real treasure waited in the vehicle bay. 3 ships sat under protective covers. 2 were fighters, sleek craft designed for hit-and-run attacks. The third made Kate's breath catch. It was a Corvette-class vessel, small enough for a single pilot but armed like something 3 times its size. Her grandmother's notes called it the Liberty Rose. Shadowmere appeared at her shoulder, chirping excitedly. The dragon examined the ships with obvious intelligence, pointing out systems with his tail. When Kate uncovered the Liberty Rose fully, Shadowmere gave an approving purr and immediately claimed the co-pilot's seat. Luna emerged from the medical bay 2 days later, fully healed and radiating energy. Her violet eyes widened as she took in the hidden base. She ran her hands over the weapons with professional appreciation, but her real interest focused on Kate. The farm woman had changed. The soft uncertainty was gone, replaced by focused purpose. Kate wore one of the modified armor suits like she had been born to it. She had spent the 2 days training with the weapons, her natural coordination making her a quick study. More than that, she moved with the confidence of someone who had found their path. Luna asked about the base, and Kate told her about Margaret Morrison, freedom fighter and grandmother, about the stories disguised as fairy tales, teaching young Kate that standing up to bullies was more important than being safe, about the woman who had pretended to be just a farmer while maintaining a resistance cell's equipment for 40 years. They spent the next week preparing. Luna shared combat techniques while Kate taught guerrilla tactics her grandmother had documented. They modified the ships with hybrid systems, combining coalition technology from the transport with the older but more flexible resistance designs. Shadowmere grew stronger with rest and proper food. He revealed more abilities, showing he could become nearly invisible by shifting his scales to match surroundings. He could also share his dimensional sight with others through touch, letting them see the weak points in coalition shielding. Kate discovered she had inherited more than equipment from her grandmother. She had the Morrison stubbornness, the refusal to accept defeat that had kept Margaret fighting even after the resistance failed. But she also had 20 years of problem-solving on an isolated farm, the ability to make do with available resources that formal military training rarely taught. Luna taught her about the wider galaxy. The Coalition controlled core human space and had annexed or destroyed dozens of other species. But pockets of resistance existed everywhere. Former military units that had refused disbanding orders, alien survivors hiding in asteroid fields, even Coalition citizens who remembered what freedom meant. The Seed Vault's location would unite these scattered forces. Already, encrypted messages flowing through hidden networks spoke of hope renewed. Species thought extinct were preparing to return. Worlds under Coalition control whispered of uprising. The beacon from Kate's farm had lit a fire across the stars. They made their first strike against a Coalition supply depot 50 miles from the burned farm. Kate piloted one of the fighters while Luna took the other, with Shadowmere providing dimensional reconnaissance. The depot's defenders expected large-scale military assault or desperate civilian attacks. They got neither. Kate used her lifetime of experience reading weather patterns to approach under cover of a dust storm. Luna's elfin magic interfaced with the fighters' systems in ways the designers never intended, making her craft dance between defensive fire. They destroyed the depot's communications first, then its weapon stores, leaving the personnel alive but stranded. More raids followed. A prison transport carrying political dissidents found its engines mysteriously failing near an inhabited moon. A Coalition intelligence center discovered its classified files transmitted to every independent news outlet in the sector. Military patrols reported ghost fighters that appeared from nowhere and vanished into dimensional rifts. Kate learned she had a talent for psychological warfare. She left messages at strike sites, written in the simple words of a farmer. She spoke of stolen harvests and burned homes, of the Coalition reaping what it had sown. The messages resonated with colonists across Terra 3 and beyond, people who had accepted Coalition rule because fighting seemed impossible. Luna provided the military expertise, but Kate brought something else. She understood how ordinary people thought because she had been one. She knew their fears and frustrations, their secret dreams of something better. Together, they crafted operations that inspired as much as they destroyed. Shadowmere grew with each battle. The Void Dragon fed on dimensional energy released by their modified weapons, becoming stronger and larger. He could now carry both women for short flights, and his breath could create portals between locations he had visited. The Coalition's rigid understanding of physics left them unable to counter abilities that should not exist. 3 months after Kate's farm burned, they met with other resistance cells at the abandoned base. Former Coalition soldiers stood beside alien survivors. Farmers shared technical knowledge with university professors. The Seed Vault data had done more than preserve extinct species. It had proven that diversity made the galaxy stronger. Kate stood before the assembled fighters, no longer the isolated farmer, but not quite the hardened warrior either. She spoke of seeds and harvests, of how the coalition had poisoned the soil but forgotten that life always found a way to grow. Her words carried truth that military speeches often lacked. Luna watched her with something more than respect. The elf commander had found an equal in the human farmer, someone who understood that wars were won by hope as much as weapons. Shadowmere perched between them, a bridge between two warriors who had become something greater together. The meeting ended with plans for a major offensive. The Coalition's sector headquarters stood on Terra 3's main continent, a symbol of their control over the agricultural worlds. Kate knew its every weakness because she had sold produce at its markets for 20 years. Luna had the tactics to exploit those weaknesses. Together with their growing alliance, they would show the galaxy that even farmers could be warriors when the cause was just. The Coalition sector headquarters rose from Terra 3's plains like a metal mountain. Its walls were reinforced titanium composite. Its shields could withstand orbital bombardment. 4,000 soldiers staffed its defenses. It was meant to be impregnable, a symbol of Coalition power that would last forever. Kate Morrison studied it through her binoculars and smiled. She had sold vegetables at the staff market twice a month for 15 years. She knew which loading dock had faulty sensors. She understood the shield rotation schedule because it interfered with produce transport. Most importantly, she knew that the base's water came from the same aquifer that fed her destroyed farm. The resistance forces gathered in the canyons numbered barely 300. Former Coalition soldiers stood beside Terra 3 farmers. Alien refugees checked weapons next to human merchants who had lost everything to Coalition taxes. They were outnumbered 10 to 1, but they had something the Coalition lacked: purpose beyond mere control. Luna moved among the fighters, checking equipment and offering encouragement. Her elfin grace had returned fully, making her seem to float rather than walk. She wore hybrid armor Kate had designed, combining Coalition protection with elven enhancement crystals. Her violet eyes burned with quiet determination. Shadowmere had grown again over the past weeks. The Void Dragon now stood as tall as Kate at the shoulder, his scales constantly shifting between dimensions. When he spread his wings, reality rippled around them. The Coalition's rigid science said he could not exist, which made him impossible for their systems to target properly. Kate called the leaders together for final planning. She had learned to command without shouting, to inspire without grand speeches. Her words were simple and direct, a farmer explaining the harvest schedule. But everyone listened because her plans had never failed them. The attack would come in 3 waves. First, Kate would lead a team through the aquifer tunnels she had mapped years ago. They would disable the headquarters' internal sensors and communications. Second, Luna would coordinate the main assault, drawing defenders to the walls. Third, Shadowmere would create a dimensional rift directly into the command center, allowing a strike team to upload the seed vault data to every Coalition network. Colonel Webb commanded the headquarters' defenses. He had requested the posting after the farmhouse battle, determined to stop the uprising at its source. His preparation showed in the increased patrols and new defensive positions. But he still thought like a conventional soldier facing conventional enemies. The operation began at dawn. Kate led her team through maintenance tunnels barely wide enough for a person. 20 years of fixing farm equipment had taught her that the most critical systems often had the least protection. They emerged in the water processing plant, where her knowledge of hydro systems let her introduce sedatives into the base water supply. Not enough to disable anyone, just enough to slow reactions. Luna's assault came as the morning shift change created natural confusion. Resistance fighters hit from 6 directions at once, using captured Coalition vehicles to breach the outer perimeter. Luna herself rode one of the modified fighters, her elven magic making the craft perform impossible maneuvers. She danced through defensive fire like her ancestors had danced through cosmic storms. The base's defenders responded with trained precision, but the sedatives made them slightly sluggish. Their shots went wide by inches. Their tactical decisions took seconds longer than normal. In battle, such small delays meant everything. Shadowmere circled high above, waiting for his moment. The Void Dragon had explained through mental images what he planned. Kate had wanted to object, knowing the risk he would take. But Shadowmere had nuzzled her hand and shown her memories of his species, the proud beings who rode dimensional currents between stars. This was what Void Dragons were meant to do. Kate's team inside the base had disabled enough systems to create chaos. Emergency lights flickered randomly. Communications mixed channels so orders became gibberish. Environmental controls cycled between extremes, making some sections too hot while others froze. The mighty headquarters had become a confused giant. Colonel Webb recognized the internal sabotage and personally led a team to the command center. He arrived just as Shadowmere began his dimensional breach. The air in the center of the room twisted, reality bending like heated glass. Through the growing rift, Webb could see resistance fighters preparing to enter. The colonel ordered his men to fire at the rift. Energy weapons discharged into the dimensional space, but the beams simply disappeared into void. Shadowmere's roar echoed from everywhere and nowhere, a sound that made hardened soldiers clutch their heads in pain. Kate came through the rift first, her modified armor protecting her from dimensional stress. She carried the seed vault data in a device Luna had built. Elven crystal technology merged with human electronics. Behind her came Luna and a dozen fighters, moving fast before the strain overcame Shadowmere. The command center erupted in close quarters battle. Webb fought with desperate skill, knowing what the seed vault data represented. If it reached the Coalition's networks, every military base and government facility in human space would receive it. The truth about extinct species would be impossible to hide. Kate reached the main terminal while Luna held off Webb's soldiers. Her fingers flew over the interface using administrator codes she had memorized from delivery manifests and overheard conversations. The Coalition's security was designed to stop hackers and spies, not someone who had spent decades as invisible furniture in their markets. The upload began, terabytes of genetic data flowing into secured networks. Immediately, automated systems tried to stop it, but the elven crystals in Kate's device shifted the data through dimensions the security programs could not perceive. Coalition firewalls meant nothing to technology that existed partially outside normal space. Webb broke free from his opponents and charged at Kate. Luna intercepted him, their combat a blur of motion too fast for normal humans to follow. The colonel had training and armor, but Luna had centuries of elven martial tradition and the fury of a genocide survivor. Shadowmere's strength began to fail. The dimensional rift flickered, reality reasserting itself. Kate's team started evacuating, but she remained at the terminal, ensuring every bit of data transmitted successfully. The seed vault was more than information. It was redemption for the galaxy. The upload completed just as the rift began collapsing. Kate grabbed the device and ran, Luna beside her after leaving Webb unconscious but alive. They dove through the shrinking portal as reality snapped back like a rubber band. Shadowmere caught them on the other side, his form wavering with exhaustion. Across the sector headquarters, terminals displayed the same message. The seeds of tomorrow are planted today. The seed vault data spread through quantum networks, jumping between systems faster than any shutdown command could follow. Within hours, it would reach every corner of human space and beyond. The resistance forces withdrew in good order, their mission accomplished. Coalition reinforcements arrived to find their sector headquarters intact but compromised. Every classified system exposed to the galaxy. More damaging than any physical destruction was the knowledge that their perfect security had been breached by farmers and refugees. In the following days, the galaxy changed. Research stations that had quietly preserved tissue samples began regeneration projects. Worlds that had lost their native species saw hope for restoration. The Coalition's narrative of necessary extinction crumbled as people learned about the peaceful civilizations erased for being inconvenient. Kate stood in her grandmother's base, watching news feeds of growing protests on core worlds. Beside her, Luna worked to coordinate with resistance cells across the galaxy. Shadowmere, returned to his smaller size, dozed on a heating pad, exhausted but satisfied. Luna asked Kate what she planned to do next. Would she find another farm somewhere? Return to the quiet life she had lost when a burning star fell from the sky carrying two extraordinary visitors into her world. Kate looked at the woman who had become her closest friend, at the dragon who had become her faithful companion. She thought of her grandmother Margaret, who had never stopped fighting for what was right. She considered her burned fields and destroyed home, the life that had ended when she chose compassion over safety. Her answer came without hesitation. The galaxy still needed farmers, but not the kind who only grew food. It needed those who could plant hope in barren soil, who could nurture freedom in hostile ground. Kate Morrison had been content to hide from the universe, but Luna and Shadowmere had shown her a greater harvest. Together they walked to the Liberty Rose, the ship her grandmother had preserved for someone with courage to use it. Luna took the pilot seat while Kate handled navigation. Shadowmere claimed his position between them, already scanning for dimensional currents. The next world waited, another place where the Coalition's grip might be loosened. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more impossible odds. But there would also be seeds taking root, species reborn, freedom growing wild despite every attempt to contain it. Kate Morrison had been a simple farmer who repaired a stranger's broken vehicle. Now she was something